Welcome to Leaders and Legends, the podcast focused on leadership and clinical trial execution. I'm your host, Patty Lushton, CEO of Diligent Pharma. In each episode, we'll get to know the individuals who are driving change and influencing the direction of our industry. Whether you're a seasoned executive yourself, an emerging leader, or simply passionate about clinical trials like I am, join us as we discuss our industry's most pressing challenges, the future of clinical trials, and hear insights and advice from the leaders who are moving our industry forward. Jeff, Michelle, thank you so much for being part of the podcast.
Michelle, you first.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here with you, Patty. Thank you.
And what I want to say is congratulations on getting your talk done and having it be terrific. And it was wonderful. And thank you so much for doing it. And it's nice to be here in this conversation on the other side of that.
Yes, well, thank you for that opportunity. And we are going to talk about the Innovation Network gathering. I think we all met prior to last year's gathering, became fast friends and collaborators, and of course, worked again this year. It's such a special and unique event and gathering, and I want to make sure we have time to sort of unpack everything that happened and what you felt was sort of like standouts for you from this year. But I kind of want to turn back the clock a little bit and really start with the founding of Smith & Jones Innovation, just that entrepreneurial pursuit, and how that came about and how you met and the core focus of Smith & Jones Innovation. So who wants to start?
Oh,
You're going to have to call on people, or Michelle can start.
yeah.
Why don't you start, Michelle?
Sure. I mean, Jeff and I both live in Portland, Oregon. And Jeff grew up here. I did not. I moved here about 15 years ago. And Jeff was one of the very first people that I ever met when I moved to Portland. And we met through, I was a TEDx organizer. I organized a TEDx event here in town. And he was our first confirmed speaker the first year I was doing this in Portland. And as we talk a little bit more about Jeff's background and his legacy, you'll see how meeting somebody like Jeff when you move to a new town changes the experience that you're going to have living in that place. He knows everybody. People love him. It is like he has had such a huge impact on this place. And having grown up here, he knows it in this deep way that a lot of newer comers, which I guess I still am, even though I've been here a while, can never know. So that's how we first met. That was 14 years ago now.
So you met through TEDx, and then how did you form this organization?
Yeah, that's a good jumping off point. So, and even a good lead into this story. So we had decided, we had worked on various things together and projects here and there. And then I was at an industry conference, and it was right as we were in the throes of selling our previous company, not Michelle and me, but me and some other people. And there are all these, I've told this story before, there are all these brilliant people in the room. The average number of advanced degrees per person seemed to exceed 1.2. But they had us in the basement of this hotel with kind of bad lighting and no speaker prep and a bad microphone system and ugly slides and one C-SPAN camera, and everybody just waiting to go to the happy hour afterwards. And I called Michelle and I said, we got to do something better than this. We start talking, and the idea was to do something that was worthy of the people and the ideas gathered. And Michelle was the best complex event organizer that I've seen, and thought that there was a chance to do something special. And it started out, I was in the middle of a non-compete, and it started out that we did the event, and it was kind of off to the side, and it was not the core focus for either of us in that first year. And after that first year, I think we felt we were sort of onto something, and even the word Innovation Network was almost an accidental name. It was like what we were trying to do. It was not, somebody sent us the company actually that bought us sent me like a professional marketing person, and they gave us, started working on these names, and they were like Ignite. I mean, it was like everything had an exclamation point, and I was like, this is not. We're not trying, like, the reason it's not called a conference, we're always gathering, is because the humblest word we can think of, right? It's just like this, we're just gonna get some people together. We're gonna be intentional with how we do it, and we're gonna do it the best way we can, and we'll see what happens. And that was and that was sort of the beginning. And then after we had done it a couple times, I'll say just this little piece, and then the non-compete ended, and the company who bought us was nice enough to let the Innovation Network become independent, and nice enough, even nicer, to continue to sponsor.
Very cool. Well, so I, of course, know you through the Innovation Network gathering, but you're doing other events too, right? You're working in other domains. Let's put it that way. Is that a fair statement?
We did a an energy and climate technology event last year, uh, but this year this has become our core focus. We have
Okay.
spawned Whale Tank, uh, which is our startup pitch, sort of accelerated pitch competition, and doing that additional times. We're thinking about an additional thing this spring on humanity and data, kind of the underlying conversations around AI. So there's some things we're working on, uh, but this is becoming the clinical trial industry is becoming a little bit more of our focus. We're not
I
promising
see.
for that to be the whole thing, but that, as you know, you spent your career in it, it can be pretty all encompassing. I mean, just understanding the elements, and I've been working really hard and still have a ton to learn. So yeah, Michelle, you can edit whatever I say.
No, it's true. In the many years that Jeff and I have known each other, we have done a variety of other things. Like one of my favorites is we had this little nonprofit called Super Think, which did radical community gratitude for stuff that matters. So we would find, local folks in the community and do this storytelling event, which was pretty casual, but a really community focused thing. And we would tell gratitude stories. And then we'd do these crowd think events where we'd find somebody and we'd show up and surprise them with a gratitude thing for all the people's lives that they'd impacted. So through all these things, we've met a bunch of people. So on the side, Jeff and I get called pretty regularly from people who are doing random events in town, and they say, could we consult with you? Could you give us advice about this? Could you help with this little tiny, teeny, tiny piece? I stage managed
Hmm.
an event last year for a friend of our mutual friend of ours who was doing a thing highlighting city council candidates. And so, we do little things on the side to help out the community members that we have here in town. So we keep it local that way.
It's so cool. Well, just what you described, it's so creative. And in this day and age where we're just bombarded with on screen, online, just getting together and telling stories and having it grounded in gratitude. I mean, that is very, very cool. I want to talk about the way that you both work together because it feels to me from working with you for some time that you're kind of a sort of a perfect complement to each other. Like, Michelle, you're the yin to Jeff's yang in a way. And I want to hear from you, just your perspective of working together. And Michelle, could you kind of talk about what you see as what Jeff brings to the partnership in terms of his superpowers? And then Jeff, I'll ask you about Michelle. But Michelle, why don't you start?
Oh, of course. Yeah, and I'll try to keep it relatively short because I could probably talk about this for a while, having known Jeff for a long time. One of the things that I think is Jeff's superpower. He's got these deeply held core values that he infuses in everything he does. Things like loyalty and curiosity and excellence. And so he's able to come, and he's the best like complex dot connector that I've ever met, and he does it quickly, like instantaneously. He can connect these disparate thoughts in a conversation, and his processing speed is extremely fast. So one of the things that I really value about working with him is especially getting into an industry I when we started doing the Innovation Network Gathering, I didn't know anything about clinical trials industry. And so I've been able to learn a lot from being in conversations, being in meetings with Jeff, where he's able to tie together these really big ideas, these really complex concepts, and the way that all of these different players in the industry work together and how they face similar problems, and tie that together and then create a vision that we can all then go follow, right? So we have this team that works for us now that he and I have recruited from different pieces of our lives, people that we know and trust and have worked with in other capacities. And he can create this big vision. Like, we can create the best event style in the world, right? So we can do better than TED. We can do better than this because we do this and this and this differently and better, and we strive for excellence, and we're tackling complex problems and making real things happen, and can create this vision and make meetings fun and engaging and entertaining in ways that a lot of people, almost nobody else I've ever met, can do. And so these core values that he threads through everything he does, I think brings this really special talent that is extremely rare. I'll start with that.
It's so well put, and I know that you're just that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? There's more to say, but Jeff, jump in and share what sort of where you see Michelle's strengths lie and her superpowers.
So in response to what Michelle had to say, and as a segue, a friend of mine, a guy named Trace Shannon, who was co-founder of a thing called Voodoo Donuts. And it's like a...
Oh, I know Voodoo Donuts.
Right,
if you've been to Portland, Oregon, you know Voodoo
right.
Donuts.
And they have now...
Unfortunately, the line was around the corner, and I could not get a Voodoo Donut. But
yes, and he was an investor in our company and a good friend. And he has a partner named Cat Daddy. And Cat Daddy is the straight man between the two. Right? I mean, despite his name, right? Cat Daddy is the order Muppet, and Trace is the chaos Muppet. And the way Trace would describe Cat Daddy is, he said, Cat Daddy, he's the rubber. He said, I'm a bouncy ball, and Cat Daddy's a brick wall that I can bounce against. And that's an extreme. That's a caricature, I think, of Michelle and my relationship. But you're right. One difference is she knows what her Myers-Briggs is. That's one way we're different, because I don't know what mine is. And
Michelle and I will let you know after this podcast. Go on.
And she knows that we are opposite. Okay, so, or at least she believes that we are opposite. So I would say that. I would throw a few things in. You said superpowers. This won't sound like superpower, but it is. She gets stressed about something early. So for people who have a penchant for procrastination, or people who are good in the moment, they think they can get, let's say, their talk ready right before they're going to go on stage, or who think they're going to put together a really interesting meeting and agenda, and they're going to do it right before the meeting starts. Or they think they're going to solve a problem, and they're going to solve that problem in their head when somebody asks them the question. These things are horrifying to Michelle. This idea is morally offensive and physiologically damaging. So she starts feeling stress earlier. And what that means is that we plan earlier. What it means, the agenda is prepared earlier. What it means is the intentionality, the experience is prepared earlier. What it means is the speaker prep starts earlier. That's not because of me. That's because of Michelle. I'll give you a second. This is her... the other thing I would say in response to what she says, I don't know if I'm a good person, okay? But I know that I'm a better person when I'm around better people. And Michelle makes me better and makes other people around us better, and makes us consider and how to be called to be the best people we can be. And we will falter and we will fail, but she helps pose that question, which is how she interacts with the universe. And it makes me do that. It makes me to be less of a jerk. Relatedly, I'll give a third. I can give more. It's going to be a little one. I should say more about that. Forgive my stutter. I prepared this just before we started.
And I have notes from weeks ago.
Exactly.
This is no joke. This is true.
So when
this is all unfolding and
exactly.
live here, folks.
It's honor. So when she uh, starts talking to somebody in a professional setting, she'll have like a 7% laugh in her voice, not a full laugh. And most people won't notice it. And I didn't notice that was going on for years. But this tiny little laugh that's going on while she's talking, this teensy weensy little laugh. And I realized, oh, she's putting people at ease. She's including just a tiny bit of joy in these professional subjects. When we're talking to somebody who's going to be nervous about something, nervous about working together, nervous about a project. We usually work with people who are pretty accomplished. We work with people who face daily stress and who are navigating big picture stress, not only on behalf of themselves, but on behalf of their teams and sometimes their communities, right? So she helps relax that stress with a little habit that she has that I find really interesting. She has worked, I think, with a coach who said she's a catalyst for courage and integrity. I would like to litigate that mission statement, but that might be beyond my ken. But I would like to litigate the mission statement. But I know that even that she settled on that as how she thinks she should travel through the world says something about how she does.
Mm. Well, I love that, and I have experienced this with both of you. Well, Michelle mentioned that you are good at connecting these disparate dots, and we had the pleasure of working together on my main stage talk, and I was amazed by that process, Jeff, just from the standpoint of you helping me to see how these different stories that I was telling you could come together. And so I saw the superpower in action in the way that we work together. And by the way, it felt like I was the only person you were working with in preparation for this big event. And how many conversations did you have leading up to ING? Like there were
Wow.
14 main stage speakers, right?
Yeah.
So do you have a sense for like how many conversations, how many calls, how many, because I felt like I was the only one. You were texting me or emailing me in between our prep sessions, and it
I
was phenomenal.
I can't count how many conversations I have. Michelle has a
I can
count.
count. Yeah, I have a count.
But you know
Of
what we
course.
said. Michelle knows. Michelle knows how many she scheduled. She does, I scheduled a bunch more and obviously a bunch of informal stuff. But I think and Michelle did tell me I don't have to feign ignorance rather, because she did tell me it was 72, and so it was something in the ballpark of 100
Wow.
probably.
Oh my
And it was like
gosh.
and I will say this year stretched me. This year was the year that I worked with the
Mm.
most. Uh, and sometimes it was just we all do context switching, right? And we do context switching in our own companies, right? Where we have to think about marketing and sales, and we have to think about product, and we have to think about investor relations or whatever the areas are. We all do context switching. This was the most challenging context switching I've ever had in my life because I'd have to think about those things for our organization. And then I'd be talking to you about what visualization looks like, how that's
Mhm.
related to mycelium networks in a farm, how that's related to making change in clinical research. And then I would switch gears and have to talk about the relationship between astrophysics and the regulatory landscape within clinical research. And then I'd move on to talk about digital interoperability and not a talk in this context, but actually how can we take a tangible step forward in that? And it was and there it was a gratifying year because it may be the first time in my life I was like, whoa, maybe this is about what I can do. This is because there were just a couple times this is because I never felt it before, right? For each of us, some things for me are hard, some things are easy. That kind of stuff's always been easy for me. And this was the first year that I felt it.
And
Oh, isn't that great?
for me, I think
I
this is
love that.
related to Jeff's superpower, right? Like he's one of the hardest working people I've ever met. But it's not just like a lot of people work hard, but it's that complexity and his ability to
Mm,
do that, like being really
yeah.
intelligent about it, doing it and connecting it and switching. And so when he says that this reached him to the top of that's serious because that is more than
Yeah.
most of us can do. It is one of his superpowers, and so it's interesting that we found the limit.
Very interesting. It takes a big brain. It takes a lot of creativity. And as you said, this connecting of the dots is is something that's pretty special. And Jeff, I experienced what you described of Michelle. We had a meeting with the three of us. I was running a tad late because I had a meeting beforehand that wasn't the easiest meeting. It was a little tense, and I was nervous coming into our meeting only because I was late and felt a little ill prepared. But Michelle, I think I might have even told you after she left, like, "Ah, just brought the blood pressure down." And I think that that also is such a gift because you're working with so many people. You're having to deal with so many um, details to pull off a multi-day event that, by the way, takes place over many different locations. I mean, just the complexity of what you guys pull off is just astounding. And to have that calm demeanor and joyful nature in the midst of a lot of what could be chaos, I think is amazing. So I love this because I think it's giving our listeners sort of a sense of how you're able to pull off this innovation network gathering. And I want to talk a little bit more about the structure of the gathering because it's very different. Of course, I was a main stage speaker. 2 years in a row we've led dive teams, and the dive teams are so satisfying to be able to have 5.5 hours to do a deep exploration of a very, very important topic where we're all challenging each other to not just talk about the problems, but to really start to think about solutions. That's unusual because most people don't spend that amount of time these days. And I just was at an event last week, which was a fabulous event, the Inc. 5000. But what I noticed is everything was so fast, fast, fast. 20-minute sort of talks, no chance for questions from the audience. Then you move over to the breakouts, 20-minute breakouts, and everybody leaves. And you try to catch people during the networking, but it's not the same. It's not the same as being in around a table with a group of leaders and getting really honest and transparent about what's happening. And so thank you for providing that opportunity for one thing. But could you, for those who haven't been to the gathering, could you just quickly describe how you structured this, so your thinking behind it? You mentioned the whale tank. Jeff, say more about that.
Michelle, do you want to start?
Yeah, Jeff, I definitely want you to give the overall vision, as we've talked about, one of your superpowers of why we do it the way we do it and how it comes together. But I think this is a great opportunity to give a shout out to the rest of our team, because I appreciate that we're making it sound here like Jeff and I do all the work, but we have a really talented team that helps make this thing happen. And without them, I mean, we have Jed Chang in our attendee experience concierge role. We have Gretchen. Thanks to you, Patty. We met Gretchen. We love Gretchen.
Yes.
She's helping
I
with
love
partnerships.
Gretchen.
She's amazing. And she's been helping with
She's
partnerships and dive teams this
Oh,
year.
good.
And
That's awesome.
and we have Hej on the whale tank and Lucy and Ian, and we're adding a couple more people. So it's like we have this team that does this thing together, right? And without this team, Jeff and I can sort of set the boundaries of, like, Jeff's, here's the vision, and I can say, and here's the practicalities as a project management type of brain. But without all of these dedicated, caring, kind humans, it wouldn't be the experience that you are describing that you have had. So I'll do their shout out, and then Jeff, I would love, you do this better than anybody, of like, why the heck do we do this the way we do, and what are all the
Please
pieces?
lower expectations.
Yeah,
All I would
that's
ask
right.
is
Lower
expectations.
expectations.
Much more likely to exceed expectations if they're very low or moderate.
Well, Jeff, before you jump in, I just want to say I also experienced the great team that you guys have. Just a quick little funny story. As you know, you graciously allowed me to bring a family member to the event. My daughter Jolene came, and she texted me and she said, Mom, Jed Chang reached out and he asked me where I wanted to sit, or, he asked me what I wanted to have for dinner. She's like, I don't need that much support or attention. I'm sure he has like hundreds of people he's trying to deal with. And I just thought, that's pretty cool. Like, she's one person coming to the event that kind of enrolled a little bit late, and he took the time to do a personal outreach to her. And let's face it, she's not the head of clinical operations at Endo Pharmaceuticals or something like that. So I thought it said volumes about both Jed, but also just the type of people that you've surrounded yourselves with.
Jen has a thing. Everybody's VIP, right?
That's really cool.
Uh, yeah, we had a VIP party, and the definition of VIP party was if you wanted to come. And it was the very, it was the very, it was at the end. So it was the very interested person. It was the person who wanted to follow up on something, some
Yeah.
relationship, some project, some talk, some dive team topic. And that was the thing. Everybody's VIP. And to all of us independently, we watched the TV show The Bear. And our favorite parts that I know brought multiple of us to tears independently. We didn't watch it together. It wasn't like a cult gathering. We all met and like watched it together. We did it independently, but I know
Although
everybody's
that
doing
would have been fun. Let's face it,
I
that
would
would
have
have been.
fun with it. It would have been better, maybe.
Yeah.
But but I would get texts, and I know the parts that would move people was when they would go to irrational lengths to make human beings feel special. And so what I am lucky, but I mean, maybe I am now, but I've never sort of considered myself an events guy. And that the event is 2 days out of the year, right? So, but that something that inspires me about working with people we work with is an irrational commitment to the experience that people get. About the event, that's an element of it. And I would say, actually, I'll start with that. I'll start with sort of the community side. How do you bring intentionality to that experience in an era that is run by money and robots? How do you create an experience that's focused on purpose and relationships? And those are people that work with money and robots, right? For the most part. But how do you create something that feels really human? Not because that's the only thing that needs to happen, but because it's something worth doing. It's a change of pace. Another little underpinning idea, there's more than we'll probably spend time on, but one underpinning idea is now that we do so much, I mean, heck, we're not in the same room. And Patty, I now feel really close to you, and we worked really closely together. But we've only worked geographically close together 4 times, right? Maybe
Right.
6,
Hmm.
right? So but dozens outside that context. And it makes us believe that those times we do come together are even more important. If we're
Hmm.
most of the time interacting digitally, that when we interact personally, we should add some intention about it. You asked about the structure event as a few pieces. And to some, I have to both praise, and then I'll also say something else about Ted. So Ted's the best organized conference I've ever been to. Okay. And it's hugely impressive. That's how, roughly speaking, Michelle and I met. And she took me 1 year. We went actually to TED Active in Vancouver. So actually, not in Vancouver, excuse me, in Whistler. So you could go skiing. And it was, and they put on a marvelous show. And I was dazzled. But then I realized I didn't come home with anything. And
Mm.
I thought about that, to Michelle's thing. Some of my purpose of doing this is, what can I do that's interesting enough that Michelle will keep working with me? Because I think she's an enormous asset. And her passion was not in clinical research. It's not in technology. It's not in biotechnology, right? It's in humanity. That's the stuff that she cares about. I like to nerd out with people who like to nerd out on things. Uh, but she is motivated by how can we create an experience that's genuinely interesting and genuinely useful and genuinely impacts people's lives and impacts on a few sectors. It impacts at the broader sector, almost, kind of galactic level, kind of big picture, that impacts at the company level and also impacts on the personal level, that a person is impacted by it. Not every time, but at least sometimes. And so it's a question we haven't answered yet. We have a question: what would it look like? And because we will never answer this question fully, and we will never accomplish this if this were a goal. But it's an interesting question to militate conversation, which is, what would the best event in the world look like? And we have few operating hypotheses. We haven't answered the question. We have a few operating hypotheses. First of all, it wouldn't be bigger. That might be, for the event leader, that might be the best event because you could sell the most tickets, because you could charge the most to sponsors, because you could be the most famous. But for the participant, it wouldn't be better. So we try to have it at a size that if you want to see somebody who is there, odds are you will be able to, right? Without spamming them 16 times in the app that is given to you upon registration. Second, it would have intentional interactive opportunities. We don't do sales booths, not because we knock them. Someday we might even try to do something that's sort of a similar thing if we can come up with a novel way of doing it. But because I've been there, I've had to, walk by and hope to meet people and, know that somebody worked at Merck and try to chase them down and tap them on the shoulder. And, and I didn't like that and they didn't like that. And, it wasn't great. So we try to put people in a context where we just be the people that we are. And Jed came up with the idea for the conversation lunches, right? So we get people, instead of throwing a box lunch at people or selling sponsors the idea of organizing their own little lunch, say, hey, we'll get people together at lunch. That we do a plated seated dinner. That's not, we took a bath on the plated seated dinner last year, but we recognized it was time we could all be together. And it was a time, again, that people get to sit together at tables, another intentional opportunity to have accidental interactions. And then that brings the other piece, which is the dive teams. So another critique I had, and to be clear, I say it as like, I used to listen to the guy who started UFC, and he would compliment boxing, but realize that much the reason he started UFC was his frustration about boxing. And I realized that anytime I knocked it, I have to praise them because I'm an enormous fan of what they've done in the world. But another thing is they didn't ask anything of me. And they didn't have any context when I was with other people where they were asking us something together. Here's a weird one that I've never said I've never said before. Rick Warren, guy who did the convocation at Barack Obama's first inauguration, wrote a book called The Purpose-Driven Life. And he says that movements take big group stuff and small group stuff. If you're really going to make impact, you can't just have a throng. You have to have teams. You have to have relationships. And so we try to have the big picture stuff. We try to have the big meeting where somebody as brilliant as you are, and I'm saying that not to shine you on, but to say thank you again, gives us something, ideas that have changed the way I see the world personally. And I know that means they will for others also. Have changed the way I see the world over the last 5 months, 6 months, 7 months. And I think for the rest of my life. Yeah, yes to that. But also yes to small group chaos. Big group, you can't have chaos. Big group, you have to figure out what's going on. You have to intend to do what you're doing. You have to have stage direction to the moment. You have to have words that are prepared because that's got to go well. But in small groups, you can have chaos. And all I mean by chaos is you don't know what's going to come up. You don't know who's going to say what. You don't know what the best idea is going to be. You're going to start out with a question, not necessarily an answer, and it might go a different direction. And if there's only 12 people there, that's great. That worked. So we try to have that combination, and by having each of those things, then finally having something hopefully to show for it. We won't do it every time. We won't boil every ocean, but some of those teams, every once in a while, 2 out of 12 times, 3 out of 7 times, come up with something. And we can talk about some of those things that have come out of it. But those are a few pieces of the structure.
And last year we tried the whale tank for the first time. And so we can say a little more about that if we want to. And part of why we chose to do that is to get some of the people who are, startups in the industry, people who are like at a different phase of trying to work on this. And Jeff can give the backstory of how that came to be. And so we tried that for the first time last year, which was year 3 of the Innovation Network Gathering. Did it again this year. We'll keep doing that. And this year, we also introduced another new small group experience that we called Navigate Workshops. Again, because we are trying to look at what we're doing at both the industry level, like the sector level, as well as organizational level with our partners and organizations that are in this with us, facilitating dive teams and so forth, and at the individual level. So if there are individual people who work in this industry who are coming, who want to deepen their skills in leadership or team management or remind themselves why they do this work in the first place. Or then we have workshops that they can individually opt into as another option as well. So we're still working on how those small group things come together in an excellent way.
Mhm.
Jeff, maybe you want to say a little of how the whale tank even got started, because that came out of one of the early gatherings as well.
Yeah, when I was talking about things that are coming out of this one of them, and that we're really excited about. And we're now working on doing one with another larger partner, sort of embedded within their thing, where they don't have the same fetish about reasonable size that we have, and which has some benefit, right, to some of the participants, because then you never know who might happen by. Uh, but and also inspired kind of by the same sensibility. Uh, what's something we'd want to go to, right? What's something that
Mhm.
I would do?
It
And just
mm.
selfishly, and not because I matter, but because I'm often my best focus group. And I think each of us is our best focus group. Uh, when Patty, you've had to do this, right? You've now had multiple companies that you've had to go pitch, and multiple times when you've spoken at conferences, when you've scheduled meetings, where you've gone through the event portal and scheduled speed dating meetings or whatever they are, right? And uh, and and when we were starting, it was a software company, and we were invited to join an accelerator, and we did join a different accelerator. We were invited to join a few, and we did join one, and we would go to pitch competitions, and they felt like they were built. Not the accelerator we did, actually. I'm grateful to them, but the so many of the events felt like they were built for the investors. That the
Mm.
reason they were there is so uh, VCs, maybe angels, maybe PE firms, but maybe hedge funds, but roughly speaking, investors could sift through options and then uh, make uh, and then make lowball offers to people for shares. Okay, and that's what and it will not come across that way. But they were trying to do. They wouldn't have to make lowball offer once you had this idea that you were sifting through lots. Then you're like, oh, I guess they could choose among any of these companies. Their powers with them. We're like, what would be a experience we'd actually want to do? And there are a bunch of them. I won't give the whole thing. I'm passionate about this topic. I can talk about it for a long time, but I don't want to bore the heck out of you or your viewers, Patty. But the uh, one of our speakers was a guy named Stefano Zenios. He runs the Stanford Graduate School of Business incubator. They call it the Startup Garage. They've done 150 startups. Their big win is DoorDash, and he and I and became something north of acquaintances. And I went and visited him in Palo Alto, and I was humbler than this. But I said the challenge you've got with your student. I was talking about his students is that so many of the B2C things like DoorDash have been done. I can now order just about anything I want on my phone, but there's still room to run in the complex, highly regulated, scientific adjacent B2B world. But so much of the startup kind of infrastructure and landscape is built around kind of a B2C world. So imagine, for instance, Shark Tank, where
Mhm.
I go and I pitch to Mark Cuban and Mr. Wonderful why people are going to like my blanket or people are like my smoothie maker. And Mr. Wonderful says, yes, I think people will like your blanket. And Mark Cuban says, yes, I really like your smoothie maker. But what if you said, here's how I think that integrated ecosystems are going to dislodge EDC within the next blank years within midsize and large pharma. Okay. And that's a pretty simple use case. And they wouldn't know what I'm talking about. And not
True.
because they're not smart, but even if they had the vocabulary, they wouldn't be in any position to know what actually would fit within the tech stack of the necessary company. Okay. So if you're doing something you're doing, Patty, where you are trying to figure out a genuine pain point that I felt of having the pride swallowing siege of filling out an IQVIA uh, questionnaire for vendor qualification and then having to do that again. And
800 times maybe?
right. And
Yeah.
and the typical investor is not in a position to evaluate how that's going to work, who needs it, who even is precise to the customer in an area when, in fact, it's kind of multiple stakeholders and customers at the same time to make it work. That we said, well, maybe instead of a shark tank, a whale tank, where in the first row isn't the investor, where in the first row is in fact somebody standing in for a purchaser, somebody who's not a jerk,
Mm,
but somebody who is in fact somebody who works at Merck, somebody who works at Endo, somebody who works at one of the outfits that in fact these startups who come to us want to pitch. The very people that they would be chasing down in the hallway of another conference, hoping to
mhm.
spam them. And the people there are getting, 122 spam messages from at the fewest, right? From people trying to schedule meetings with them and say, pitch them directly. And then get your pitch on the head of a pin. Use the stuff that we've been doing now for a lot of years that now we've now gotten better at, and get your pitch. We'll put it on camera. We'll put you on a good stage. We'll get it well edited so you'll have something that's really useful afterwards. You can put it on your email signature. It's a way to tell your story. Try to get your story. And I, again, spend a rational energy trying to help our pitchers give the best pitch they've ever given. But then big group, small group, get together in a small group, get together in a round table. We're actually with, and yes, include an investor too. Yes, include some navigators, people who are exited founders. And thank you, big shout out to our exited founders who help us. They're sort of fellow friends of the good. And then also biotech and pharma representatives around a table. Okay, full table. It's only a table of 8 or 9 that really dig in for 40 minutes on what's going on with that company, not to try to sell the company,
Yeah.
but to try to find market product fit, try to find problem solution alignment. So that's the idea. And this is an idea that's been lighting me up now for a while. And now we're at the place, still some things I think we can improve on, but I
Yeah.
think we're on our way to make something special.
It's wonderful. I mean, I think that it's so valuable to the companies themselves, obviously, just to even the refinement of the pitch, right? That in and of itself is of huge value. It's valuable to the audience. I know just sitting in the audience, hearing the different companies present, opened my mind to different possibilities. I kind of like, some of them I got lit up inside, like, wow, this is cool. This is happening. And then, obviously it helps to drive innovation in the industry, which is something I'm very passionate about. I feel like, there's this sort of common thread that I'm kind of picking up on through this conversation. And what the word that keeps coming up for me is empathy. Like you have an empathetic approach to the way you do your work, both from the standpoint of, you know, um, creating a gathering that is not about you guys, but it's more about who you're serving. And then, also just wanting to make a difference with this idea of being grounded in purpose and relationships. And I just want to call it out because it's not the norm. Um, I just came back, as I said, from this Inc. 5000 conference, fastest growing companies in the US. And um, I, part of the reason I wanted to started this why I started this podcast was to really shine a light on leadership and entrepreneurship in clinical trial execution. And I think it's such a great lesson for business owners, for leaders to kind of have a viewpoint through this lens of empathy, patients, clients, the people that we're all serving, including our colleagues. I noticed the first thing you did, Michelle, was you honored all of the great people that helped make the event successful. So I just wanted to shine a light on that, um, and hopefully that resonates with you guys. I know we're closing in on time here. I could keep talking for another hour or 2 or 3. We'll have to do that off podcast. But I just want to end just very quickly, just by asking, um, like, what are you looking forward to for, the future with the work that you're doing with either, just personally or professionally? Um, Kind of a lightning question of, what you're excited about, moving forward.
Gosh.
Michelle, you first.
Yeah. Well, the next Innovation Network gathering, which we've already picked dates, it's in early October again. It'll be in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Again, it'll be our fifth
Oh,
annual.
great.
So we've already started talking a little bit about how we're going to honor that, because it feels like it's a sort of a milestone that we've reached, and maybe also a turning point of what can we be doing differently? What's the next phase of this going to look like? So that's it's exciting. And a little scary. We get to be innovative all over again. We've been innovative in small doses year over year, and now we get the opportunity to think about bigger dose innovation potentially. And just generally, I think as these things go, just having more impact on the people who work in this industry, helping remind everybody why they do this work, because it's important work. And I know that on a
Yeah.
day-to-day basis, it doesn't always feel that way, because it gets very bureaucratic, very lots of form filling out, paperwork stuff. And just being one of those touch points that people can count on to remind everybody why they do this work.
Yeah. What about you, Jeff?
Yeah. When I think about the 5 years, what I would say is, I don't think what we're doing is worth honoring, but I do think that there are things that have happened through and around and near us that are. And so thinking about what those things might be, I think is worth doing. And that maybe isn't my best answer to your question. And I should take Michelle's example and shout out Hijay on all the whale tank stuff, who I literally believe is working on that at this very moment, how to make sure that's great. And expanding that and seeing what it can be. I think that's part of the next step. I was thinking about this as I was, brushing my hair, but making sure it wasn't. and I think what we're trying to do is figure out what an innovation network should be, right? Like, what would that do? Just those words. What would that mean? What would it do? I think it would serve some function of accelerator, some function of bring a thing to us and we'll help it move a little faster and go a little better. We've talked about whale tank. I won't repeat that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would serve some function of, I don't know, I've already used the word accelerator, but sort of leadership spurrer, leadership help somebody who is sort of an established decision maker, is kind of an up and comer who hopes to become an established decision maker, get better at what they do and solve some problems. Michelle talked about the Navigate workshops, but also, what are ideas that are coming through? I've mentioned digital interoperability because I have become now a proselytizer, thanks to Bill Illis, who's at Transcelerate and at Novartis. I've become a proselytizer for how to make sure that our shipping crates stack and how to make sure our plugs fit in our outlets because patients are waiting. These are his words. We wrote them together, his words from his talk.
Yes, I remember.
And it's still now like, everything I see becomes a Tootsie Roll to me, right? Like, we've got to get that to happen. So how do we spur some of the ideas? And then some things that have gotten sort of birthed in this process. And I don't have to think further than Rona's Fun Lab, when Lindsay Wallstrom told her, gave the gift of the lessons from a tragedy that I never can keep. I can never stay straight when I start talking about it. I can never, taking the tragedy of her own daughter's death and trying to transmute it into something that can help other kids. And how can we create more kid-friendly research sites and helping some of those other things? So it's how do we make the event better? How can we make that meeting better? But also what an innovation network looks like. And I think what an innovation network looks like is can't help everything, can't do every single thing, but for some of those things that go through that flywheel, they can have some combination of be able to figure out their big idea, help work on a smaller group, have pre-work and post-work to be able to actually help solve a problem. Who could we find as partners? We're not only looking for infotainment, but helping to look to solve problems. That's sort of next steps for us and what we're trying to think through.
Very exciting, Jeff and Michelle. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast. And I really admire and appreciate you both. So thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
Watch Patty's talk.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure,
Seriously,
Patty.
watch Patty's talk.
Becky's getting a lot of shout outs, by the way.
Yeah. Becky matters.
Becky's trending. Becky's trending.
Love it.
All right, guys. Great talking to you.
Thank you, Patty.